What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about map design in Call of Duty, more specifically map design relating to this year's Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I've been seeing a lot of talk about 3-lane map design, and generally a lot of criticism of 3-lane map design. A lot of people saying that they're hoping that we won't have 3-lane maps this year, and that things will just be more open in general without those lanes. So today I wanted to share my thoughts on the whole 3-lane design debate, as well as what I would like to see, for me personally at least, when it comes to general map design in Modern Warfare. So hopping right into it, like I said, there's been a lot of criticism of 3-lane map design and a lot of people pushing against 3-lane map design. But I really feel the 3-lane design in itself isn't the problem here and shouldn't necessarily be eliminated. Most of the fan favorite maps in the Call of Duty franchise history do have a general 3-lane design. However, there is a really wide variety in 3-lane design that you can have. You can have a very strict sort of 3-lane design that Treyarch especially recently tends to have, with like Black Ops 4 for instance. When you look at a lot of the lanes on the Black Ops 4 maps, once you're in a lane, you're basically committed to getting into face-to-face gunfights. You're stuck within that lane. Whereas if you look at a lot of the Infinity Ward maps of the past, especially like pre-Infinite Warfare, you'll still primarily see 3-lane map design, but the lanes themselves tend to have a little bit more complexity to them that will allow for some decision making and flanking within the lane itself. You're not necessarily forced into those face-to-face encounters. Some examples from the past with Infinity Ward maps that are actually 3-lane designed that generally a lot of people seem to really enjoy would be Crash, High Rise, Afghan, Terminal, Backlot, Favela. All of these have a general 3-lane design to them. Now, of course, with a lot of these maps, it may not be immediately obvious that it's a 3-lane design, and that's because with a bunch of them, there are several mini lanes within the primary lane. But if you look at the general overview of these maps, there are 3 primary lanes to get from one side of the map to the other side of the map. So like I said, there's a wide variety of available map types that still fall within that 3-lane design. Treyarch tends to go with a much more strict 3-lane design, which does tend to be better for highly competitive play, but that definitely can come at the cost of fun in public matches for a lot of people. Not everybody wants to be forced into face-to-face gunfights all the time. Some people want a little bit more freedom to be sneaky or tactical and kind of flank around enemies. A common misconception is that this sort of playstyle isn't possible on a 3-lane design, and that's not true. You just need those lanes to be a little bit more open and loose. In my opinion, 3-lane map design is the best formula for a game like Call of Duty. The biggest reason for this is it provides a sense of flow, and also it makes it so the game doesn't become hide and seek most of the time. Some maps, if they get a little bit too open with their 3-lane design, they still can become like a hide and seek. But when you have 3 general lanes and you're playing 6v6, which is the standard mode for Call of Duty, if 6 players have the 3 lanes to choose from, if they're evenly distributed, you're looking at 2 players per lane, which isn't always the case, but that's at least how it's spread out. So you have that possibility of having like 2 players per lane and covering the whole map. This ensures that there's some flow and you'll actually be able to find enemies if you're looking for them, because when you start adding far too many lanes, when you drop that 3-lane design and you just make an open map and spread out a bunch of cover all over the place, with that overly complex map design, now you've suddenly got 6 players, instead of separating into 3 different lanes, they're just kind of scattered everywhere. And this means, statistically speaking, even if you're actively searching for enemies, if there are far too many lanes, your chances of finding enemies are going to be lower than on a 3-lane map design. And this can lead to, first off, like I said, sort of a hide and seek type of thing where you're just looking everywhere trying to find enemies and you're having a hard time because there are just so many places they could potentially be. And second, this also takes away from the sense of flow and map control. When you have 3 lanes in an arcade-style shooter, you can start controlling those lanes, and you can see on the mini-map, for instance, which lanes you have control over and which lanes you're losing control over. And this is a big part of the meta of Call of Duty, is controlling those lanes. When you have far too many lanes and only 6 players, you can't reasonably cover all of those lanes, and this means map control can easily go out the window, and this can essentially just create a chaotic sort of situation where you have no control over your surroundings. Now, don't get me wrong, I feel there is a place to have a few maps within the entire map rotation that aren't strictly 3-lane design, maybe a little bit more on the open side. I'm thinking maps like Wasteland, for instance, back in Modern Warfare 2. I'm totally fine with map design like that, assuming there's just 1 or 2 of those mixed in with the general rotation, because variety is nice as well. Having said that, I still feel 3-lane map design is superior, and I would like to see primarily 3-lane map design within Modern Warfare. I should also mention that I don't want to see very strict 3-lane design, or maybe just a few maps that have that strict 3-lane design for like competitive play, for instance. But I don't want to see quite as many as we see in Black Ops 4. I would like to see a bit more freedom within the lanes, slightly more openness to them, while still maintaining the general 3-lane structure. And I think we can expect to see this time around. Some of the map designers from COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2, they are now back to Infinity Ward, and therefore I'm really hoping that we'll see some of that similar map design that we saw back in those days, because many of those maps from COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2 are to this day my favorite maps in Call of Duty history. Now, a few other things to mention about map design that go outside of the standard 3-lane discussion is, first up, map sizes. And I have a pretty similar point of view here as well. I think variety is important. We definitely should have some large maps, some really small maps, but in general, I would like to see that medium sort of map design. Nothing too cramped and chaotic, but also I don't want team deathmatch games to consistently go to the time limit, even when you're trying to be as aggressive as possible and try and find your fights. I think there's definitely that sweet spot in the middle that most of the maps should fall under, and then you have your extremes with large and small, just for variety's sake to change things up a bit. Additionally, I hope we see room for traditional sniping on most of the maps in this game. That's something that I feel we've kind of lost in the past several years with Call of Duty, is the maps themselves were either too small, or they just didn't really provide those sight lines that were long enough for sniper rifles to absolutely dominate. When I think back to Modern Warfare 2, for instance, there was room for traditional sniping on nearly every single map in the game. Maybe a couple exceptions here and there, but on almost every single map, there were those obvious sniper spots, and usually they kind of balance each other out on both sides of the map. I really want to see something like that return in this, and that's not necessarily because I want to snipe more and I want to be a sniper, although I guess that's part of it. It does bring a little bit of variety into it if you have that option to always snipe if you want to. But I just feel in general it makes for more interesting gameplay. So you have your snipers and your LMG campers that will go to those sort of power positions with those longer lines of sight, and it becomes sort of a cat and mouse game. If you're using an SMG, for instance, you have to try and avoid those lines of sight and get into their flank, and then you'll have the advantage once you flank them. But if you end up in their line of sight, they have the advantage at longer ranges. I feel like a lot of that variety of playstyle has been eliminated due to map design in recent years, and I want to see that come back. On that same note of power positions, I do hope we see some really good, powerful power positions as long as they have proper counterplay to them. So I'm thinking like the cliff on Afghan, for instance. That was a very powerful position that people would gravitate towards. But if you really wanted to get that person off that cliff, it was quite easy to flank them, it was open to score streaks from above, and therefore it was easily kept in check. Another example of this is the 3-story building in Crash. That was a power position where if you took control of that building, you could get great sight lines across a big area on the map, but there were also several entry points into that building, so there was definitely some counterplay to that. Power positions, in my opinion, are also very helpful to the flow of the game, because for a lot of those newbie players or those really campy sort of players, they will gravitate towards those naturally, and therefore they'll have a clear sense of direction of where they want to go. And also, as players that are going to be more aggressive and flanking, they know that those are the positions you want to flank. You're not just spreading out into your lanes and forcing yourself into those face-to-face engagements. It makes things much more interesting overall when you have those clear power positions that you can fight over. So overall, I think you guys can probably see a trend here with this video. In Modern Warfare, I really hope we see map design somewhat similar to the Infinity Ward map design that we saw in COD 4, Modern Warfare 2, some of Modern Warfare 3 as well, although I feel like Modern Warfare 3 lost some of what made map design special in the Modern Warfare 2 and COD 4 days. In general, I want 3-lane map design to stick around, but not necessarily every single map in the game. I don't want the maps to be too strict and forcing face-to-face engagements too much, but at the same time, I don't want so much complexity in the map design that I'm playing hide and seek. Of course, that's just my opinion and what I would like to see in Modern Warfare. I'd like to know in the comment section below. First off, what are your thoughts on 3-lane map design? Do you think they should scrap that completely and just start adding more lanes to it? Or do you think in general that it is the best formula for Call of Duty? And second, what sorts of maps would you like to see this time around with Modern Warfare? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.